I thrive in times of chaos. Chaos is a ladder you can climb. I mean, there was one guy I remember who was able to put 2 snakes into his mouth and the snakes would come out each nostril. I was lucky. I came at the time of punk, becoming a beast. I became a creature on the island and I became trapped in my own movie.
Richard Stanley, je suis très heureux de vous interviewer dans le cadre du Bloody Weekend. Vous naissez en Afrique du Sud, où votre mère travaille comme anthropologue, en vous faisant de la sorte baigner dans le monde du folklore. Après des courts-métrages tournés localement, vous déménagez à Londres, où vous vous spécialisez dans les clips musicaux, avant de documenter la guerre que mène la population afghane contre les soviétiques. Puis de percer dans le cinéma avec Hardware et Dust Devil. L'île du Docteur Moreau, votre film suivant, sera hélas une expérience catastrophique qui vous éloignera du grand écran jusqu'en 2019 et la sortie de Color Out of Space. Mais outre le cinéma, vous êtes passionné par l'ésotérisme et l'histoire de l'Europe médiévale, autant de sujets que nous allons aborder. Votre mère était anthropologue et vous avez étudié ce domaine à l'université. En quoi cela a-t-il influencé votre carrière?
Well, I was very lucky to have a mother who was an anthropologist and who was obsessed with African tribal culture and witchcraft. And she was writing a big thesis, her great book about African mythology, when I was born and in the first few years of my life. So my first memories and my premier experience of life was of tribal communities and of witch doctors and African magic. This was normal until I went to school, and I thought this was the real world. It was only when I was 6 years old and went to a normal school that I realized other people were not living in the same reality. This was my reality at the beginning. So I was lucky to be born into a world where there were invisible people, where there were spirits, where there was sorcery, and where this was accepted as normal. And of course, as a child, this was fantastic. I thought these guys were so entertaining and so funny. Sorcerers and some of the most entertaining people you'll ever meet. I mean, there was one guy I remember who was able to put 2 snakes into his mouth and the snakes would come out each nostril. His name was Zizwi Zonkwi, and I thought he was so funny when I was a kid. This just made me laugh and laugh. It was only later in life I realized this was kind of unusual. Also, my mother's favorite author was H.P. Lovecraft. So she got me reading Lovecraft from the time I was maybe 6 years old, from very young. And as a result, I became très passionnel about Lovecraft's work. By the time I was 12, 13, I was playing Call of Cthulhu. I was completely conversant with all of this Lovecraftian magic. This was my childhood. She trained me to make supernatural horror movies in the same way that Sarah Connor trains her son to fight Terminators. I had no choice about my life.
Vous êtes né en Afrique du Sud, mais vous avez émigré à Londres dans les années 80. Il s'agissait d'un véritable choc culturel. Qu'en avez-vous tiré, notamment dans vos clips de rock?
Yeah, it's a big question, so I'll cover. Yeah, I grew up to try to make movies, and because I was growing up in a police state in South Africa, I was very unpopular. Had an English accent, I had long hair, I had crazy T-shirts and always a camera, and I had black friends. So they assumed, of course, I was a full enemy of the state. So by the time I was 16, I was being arrested all of the time and harassed by the police. I was in and out of jail the whole time. I was arrested 6 times in one day, just because they assumed that I was the trouble. If I had stayed, I would have been killed or gone to jail. There was no choice. By the time I was 16, I had to leave. I was not able to bring down the government. They would have got me. So I claimed political asylum in Angleterre. And the main thing I felt coming to Europe was freedom. At last, I came first to Frankfurt, and then I went to Amsterdam, and then to England. And coming to Amsterdam and seeing a world where there was no censorship, where all of these videotapes were available, where there was legal marijuana, legal prostitution, live music, art, culture, all the things which were not allowed in South Africa. Great music too, that I thought, wow, this is the real world. And from this time, I've been very against censorship and very for any form of freedom of expression. I have hated seeing in the last few years how Europe has started to become more conservative and more right-wing, because I wanted this to be the land of the free. This was the values that I embraced. The only job I could get, apart from working in restaurants and carrying garbage and cleaning floors in London, was making music videos. So I was able to shoot promotional videos for bands. And I was very lucky because some of the bands I worked with were fantastic. The very first video I made was for Fields of the Nephilim. This was the first, I'd never made a music video before. And it was just by luck that these guys were obsessed with spaghetti westerns and horror movies, that they share the same culture. So I was super lucky to land in the scene and to be able to do good work for Fields of the Nephilim, later for John Lydon in Public Image Limited. And I started to move to bigger bands, and as a result came to meet rock stars, people like Iggy Pop or Lemmy. And this was great luck. And it came mostly because I was making insane suggestions. I did not know what any of the rules were, so I would make a suggestion for a video that was so wrong that it would get attention. Like with when I made friends with John Lydon, Johnny Rotten, I put in a treatment saying I wanted to do an all singing, all dancing abortion, where the lady comes to the abortion clinic to get an abortion. I wanted Lydon to be the head abortionist and the rest of the band to be the surgical team. Because my suggestions were so deranged, that this got attention. In the present day of political correctness, this would not be the same. I would be ostracized and cut out, but I was lucky. I came at the time of punk. This was a punk gesture. And so I learned that the more offensive I could be, the more chance we would have of working. So I would always try to think of the idea that was so fucking outrageous that no one else would dare to say it. Yeah, it worked. I became a filmmaker.
It was something crazy.
Fully. We were shooting maybe one music video a month. Yeah, because there was not much money to pay the rent and to stay alive. We were constantly hustling to get the next video, and spending the whole time going to gigs, going backstage with the bands, trying to persuade them to give us money to get the next job. So this was, for a few years, my whole life was different passes and backstages. Yeah.
You are brave.
I didn't know anything else. It was the only life I knew.
Pourquoi avoir choisi de documenter la guerre que menaient les Afghans contre les Soviétiques?
Good question. Okay, so we had to make maybe one music video a month to just pay the rent and to stay alive. And after 2-3 years, the quality started to go down, because not every band was brilliant. And you're only as good as the track. And we started to do dance tracks for 12-year-olds. And the kind of work I was doing, I realized we would never get a movie. And I think I broke up with my first girlfriend. I was in a bad mood. There was a jihadi guy who was driving one of the trucks on the shoot I started talking to. And he said he was saving up the money to go back and join the jihad. And I was in a bad mood. So I said, hey, if I give you the money to go back, will you take me with you? And this guy was my ticket into Afghanistan. So, and I thought, okay, now is the time to change. That we must make a war documentary, and move from music videos to something serious. So this was the opportunity to go to war. And I felt also that to make a point to the South Africans that I was taking a political stance, that I was not frightened of the war. They thought I was a coward running away from fighting the Russian army. So I thought, let's go fight the Russians and see what happens. And this was a very good move for me in many ways, because the fact that we survived this experience meant nothing was really that scary again. And making it the first feature film, Harvey Weinstein, all these things were not so scary as the Russian army. So it prepared me in some ways. Also, the tail end of this experience, which was too strong and strange to describe, at the end of it, I was given full British citizenship, which, as a result of the events in Afghanistan. I traded information about the Afghan war to the British diplomatic people, and in return they gave me a full British passport and the right to be an EU citizen. So it was a good move to get involved in this war. Yeah, I would say also in relation to this, we were ahead of our time, because at this time no one realized what would happen in Afghanistan. We spent maybe 10 years running around trying to tell the BBC about Al-Qaeda and about the issues in Afghanistan, and people thought I was fully delusional. It wasn't until 9/11 that anyone actually began to take the story seriously. So we were maybe 10 years premature in what we were trying to say, but we were maybe too far ahead of the headlines. Very beautiful too. That's the funny thing about war. It was fantastic at the same time, and like it was maybe also the best time of my life. I do not regret it, and I'm very glad that we had this experience. And then we became addicted to war for a while. There was a time when we did not feel we were doing anything serious unless we were somehow in the front lines. So this took me eventually to Haiti, back to Africa, and I kept chasing news stories.
Vous décidez de passer au long métrage avec le film Hardware sur un robot prêt à régler par la force le problème de la surpopulation. Nous sommes bien loin du folklore africain, d'où est venue cette idée.
Well, I've always been afraid of the future. Because I grew up in the 70s, I read a lot of dystopian science fiction. I was influenced by Soylent Green, Soleil Vert, and the book by Harry Harrison, Make Room, Make Room. All these predictions about the 21st century, which were coming in the 1970s, saying unless we do something now, I mean, the greenhouse effect and global warming, I first heard about from Harry Harrison's novel, Make Room, from maybe about 1972. So these ideas, which were now common, be it global warming or AI, were already present in the fiction of the 1970s. These things terrified me as a kid. I was having, like many kids, nightmares almost every night about nuclear war, about the ozone layer, about this notion that I would be living my whole life in this nightmare overpopulated wasteland. So yeah, in a way, this was a big fear of mine. And hardware is the world I don't want to be living in. And year by year, I feel like we are getting closer and closer to this reality. In hardware, the environment is a mess. It is a continuous heat wave. I think probably the best thing about the hardware is that we also feel that they're living in a right-wing fascist country, and all the characters accept this. There's no sign of a resistance or rebellion. They're all tacitly working for the government. No one is really questioning the circumstances. I also like the legal marijuana in the movie. The legal marijuana and the kind of addiction to computer technology were both, I think, good guesses for 1989 about how the world might go, because sadly it's close to this. I wish that hardware was less accurate. Yeah, it's unfortunately still fairly close to the world we are heading towards.
Vous retrouvez en revanche les mythes africains avec votre film suivant, Le souffle du démon, que vous aviez déjà adapté en court-métrage au début de votre carrière. Pourquoi ce Dust Devil, qui recueille le sang d'une femme en Namibie pour une cérémonie surnaturelle, vous parle tant?
Well, Dust Devil, my second film, is really my love letter to South Africa. It is everything I could think about the country where I spent the first 16 years of my life. I created this film first to do as an amateur movie. It was the first script I tried to write. I thought it would be an easy movie to make. I thought, let's make a film where there's maybe just two characters, the lady driving the car and the devil who is hitchhiking, and we can use the African landscape, and I could use my own car. So I thought this should be easy. But of course it was not easy. And we failed to complete the 60mm version. I had to run from the country. And it was only after hardware that the financing was available to go back and to complete Dust Devil. So it was really my first movie, but it arrived second. But it was the first movie I tried to make. And this movie is not a true story, but it contains many, many true things. It's a collage of different things about South Africa that I wanted to say. Many things about the country which people were not aware of. like the really bad sexual politics, the domestic violence, the car accidents. Everyone drives very badly and is usually very drunk, and we call broken glass on the asphalt South African confetti because it is a crazy country for bad driving. So I wanted to make a movie about all those things. And I also wanted to, it is a metaphor for the whole country. The girl being seduced by the devil is my idea of the soul of the country. The white guy and the black guy have to make friends to try to save her, etc. So it is, some part of it is a metaphor for trying to save South Africa and to escape the nightmare future which is waiting down the road.
Interesting.
But I've been wearing a hat since I was maybe 13 or 14 years old. My mother always said that if I did not take my fucking hat off, I would go bald or my hair would fall out. And my mother was wrong because I have great hair. This is a sign that she was not always right. Hats are actually good for hair.
L'étape suivante s'avère être moins amusante. Une nouvelle adaptation de L'île du docteur Moreau, incluant au casting Marlon Brando et Val Kilmer. Hélas, on vous licencie rapidement du tournage. Pourquoi?
I cannot easily describe everything that happened on the island of Dr. Moreau. At the time, I thought it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. But now I realize it is not. It is maybe the fourth or the third worst thing that's ever happened to me, because worse has happened since. But at the time, it was an experience I don't think any human being can go through without being driven insane. I mean, it was my script that caused it all. And this drew Marlon Brando to the project. And I'm super grateful for the opportunity to have worked with Brando, to have been Brando's friend. And I can say that he was not insane. He was living through intense personal tragedy at the time, and it was a nightmare state of affairs for him too. But one of the problems in this world is that the moment there is money, money corrupts people. And most people in this world would probably kill someone for $1 million. And when you have a budget, by the time I left the movie, it was around 25 million. And then après, it went up, up, up. They say on IMDb it is maybe around 45 million, but I've also heard 70 million. And when money is so great, people will do anything. Everyone was lying. Every single person, the PA was lying to me, my agent was lying to me, my mother was not entirely telling the truth. If I was glad I did not have a dog or a cat, because even they would have been trying to make side deals at the same time. With $70 million or $45 million, you start to become afraid because, of course, if anyone can get rid of you and take the money, they will. So I was perhaps naive about what happens when you go over a certain budget level. And on Dr. Moreau, a series of circumstances brought me into conflict with Val Kilmer. This was what really brought me down. It was a combination of Val Kilmer and a tropical hurricane that removed me from the movie. But this was only on literally day 2 or day 3, and this was only because the producers were already trying to remove me from the movie. The moment Brando came on board, the first thing they did is they tried to remove me from the movie. And the first I heard was that Brando was making the movie and that it would be directed by Roman Polanski. And I went crazy to try to get rid of Polanski, and I succeeded. I have somehow succeeded in deposing Polanski and staying on the movie by making friends of Brando, and I tied myself to the film. But New Line Cinema hated this. They never wanted a Richard Stanley movie. And the fact that I was somehow they were contractually obliged to have me meant that from the beginning they were looking for any way to separate me from the movie. So the real bad guy of the film was the line producer, Tim Zinnemann, the son of Fred Zinnemann, who made High Noon. And I should say that Tim Zinnemann was also the producer of Alien 3. So this is the man who killed Hicks and Newt. And if he can kill Newt, he can kill me. I mean, this guy had no sentiment towards these characters, or was prepared to do anything. And he did not like me. I didn't like him, and he took me down the first opportunity. The moment there was a fight with Val Kilmer, I was gone. But then the part that became really insane was through circumstance. I ended up trapped on the island. most of us were trapped. We couldn't get away. Mostly because my cast had already been life cast into the different creatures. And they said if they broke contract and left, they would sue them for the cost of the makeup. So many of the people were trapped. I mean, Firuza Balk, Ron Perlman, Bill Hootkins, Tamara Morrison. These guys would have left if they could. But they were forced. They were held to contract by Time Warner and New Line Cinema. We were trapped on the island. And I stayed with them, so I ended up becoming a beast. I became a creature on the island, and I became trapped in my own movie. And it was like the difference between a lucid dream and a nightmare, where you create everything, but it's no longer under your control, and it's no longer in the same order it was supposed to be in. So this period, which went on for months, and in the Australian rainforest, was so deranged. But whatever else we might say about the island of Dr. Moreau, nobody died, no children or animals were harmed. And in the end, the movie did recoup as well. It wasn't even a box office failure. So it was a nightmare from hell, but it could have been worse. At least nobody actually died. But it is not a good movie. And the experience of every day being a beast person on the island and being a captive inside of this process was enough I think to drive anyone mad. I've written an unpublished book about it, and now that both Brando and Val Kilmer are no longer with us, I hope one day that this manuscript will come to light, because it was a journey beyond the limits of sanity, of sane and acceptable human conduct. We were all animals. Every day we were becoming more and more like animals. It was a crazy situation to be in. And some part of me has never escaped. Some part of me is still on the island. I still dream about it. The different beast people show up in my sleep the whole time. They're not in the movie, but Wagdi, the little dog man, is still part of my dreams, and Aisa, the cat lady, they're all still inside me. So I'm not. I think this will haunt me until my grave, probably. Yeah, it's too bizarre. But I was also happy for a while on the island. There were some times of happiness. I'm kind of a bulldog, like a dog man. I'm one of the extras for a full overhead Stan Winston original mask. Well, no one ever introduced me to Frankenheimer. No, I never met him. I mean, he was directing the movie, but he didn't know who I was. And by the time they started shooting, they had fired everyone. I mean, the original DP was Dariusz Wolski, and they got rid of Dariusz and Dariusz's crew, and he was replaced by Billy Fraker. And when Billy Fraker took over as the DP, he brought his own crew and his own technical people. So none of these guys had ever seen me or knew me. No one had ever introduced me to Billy Fraker or to his focus puller or to the first AD or the second AD. They had no clue who I was. So as we had never had that conversation, it didn't matter. And there was one guy who gave me the idea working there, who had been fired 3 times off the same project. Each time they fired him, he came back into a different department, got rehired onto the job. He was initially in art department, and he was fired for punching out one of the other guys, and then he came back as a driver. And when Firuza Balk was trying to escape the production, she threw herself into the back of his car and said, "Take me to Sydney," which was the capital on the other side of Australia, and this guy drove her right across Australia to get to Sydney. And then, of course, when he got there, they fired him, and then he came back as a dog. So this project was full chaos, like a fantastical version of the Vietnam War or the Iraq War. It was Time Warner were pinned down in the rainforest and exposed for this colossal investment that they would do anything to try to recoup or get their money back, and it was a full surrealist nightmare. So I hope that I get a chance before I die to make a careful first-hand account. It's very truthful and follows the events day by day in a very careful way.
Après cette expérience pénible, vous vous lancez dans divers projets, courts-métrages, dont The Mover of Thoughts dans le Theater Bizarre, scénario, documentaire, création du site ésotérique Terra Umbra, un livre sur la quête du Saint Graal, etc. Votre mère vous a donné le goût de l'anthropologie, mais d'où vient cet attrait pour l'ésotérisme?
Well, I do believe in what you might call the supernatural. I do believe that there are more things in this world than I can understand. And many times in my life, I've seen things or experienced things, often extreme coincidence, things that are just, how is that even possible? Things that make me doubt that the explanation they give me is the right one. Increasingly, I've started to think maybe I am living in a simulation because it feels like a sandbox video game a lot of the time. It doesn't feel natural or right. And the further you lean into that insanity, somehow it works for you. And so I've been looking for proof of the supernatural a lot of the time, and I wish I could document that and bring back evidence of things which are truly bizarre. The work I did in Haiti was partly related to that, because I can see that when people are getting possessed, they really are getting possessed. They're not pretending for camera, and it's repeatable. Yeah, they get possessed again and again, and when you do the ritual, if something is repeatable, you can observe it, you can film it, you can document it. It starts to enter into science. If I could get a CAT scan or an EEG, I could probably prove that their brainwaves were changing at a certain point. You can start to find proof of the supernatural. And this was something that I kept chiseling at in different ways to try to just prove that there is more in this world than we can understand, than our science currently encompasses. And I think within that, there's the potential for new science. Within voodoo, there is potential for treatment of epilepsy or psychiatric patients. There's stuff we can back engineer from sorcery, from the supernatural, that hasn't been examined properly by academia. But as a non-academic, as an entertainer, as a showman, I'm allowed to do those things. If I was on campus, they would cut my tenure and probably get rid of me. But as an entertainer, it's okay. You're not held to the same standard. So this has been a persistent issue. And with the Holy Grail, this is fairly obvious. Nobody sane goes looking for a Holy Grail. I mean, most sane and normal people never even think of that, because I don't think you even think about the notion of a grail or something that will heal you until you're damaged. It's only people who are broken or are destroyed who then start searching for something that will make sense of their lives again. And after the island of Dr. Moreau, I needed a Holy Grail. After the fall of Camelot, you need something which will give you back a reason to live. In a way, it was in France and in Occitanie and in Montsegur that I found this. That I found what for me was a reason to keep going. In the end, I moved to the Pyrenees, to Montsegur, so I could live there and be close to the castle. And I had no intention of coming back into the film industry. I was hoping I would be allowed to live out my life on the mountain and to stay in the forest. But the film industry had different intentions. It came and found me.
En 2019, vous revoici enfin aux commandes de votre premier long métrage depuis l'île du Docteur Moreau, Color Out of Space, une adaptation justement de Lovecraft. D'où vous est venue cette idée cosmique et comment l'avez-vous vendue aux producteurs?
Well, Color Out of Space happened as a result of a short movie I made in Montsegur. It was a mistake, but we were bored, we were messing around, and we had a Ouija board. We had a hot pink Ouija board we'd bought from Toys R Us, and we were playing with the Ouija board, and we asked the Ouija board, what should I do? What should we do now? And the Ouija board said, make mother of toads, make mother of toads. And I said, what the hell is that? And it turned out to be a short story by Clark Ashton Smith. So then I hadn't read it. I then went and read the short story by Clark Ashton Smith. I didn't really like it. And I got back to the Ouija board and said, okay, what do you want me to do? And the Ouija board gave me specific directions. It said, update the story, make it about an American couple who are buying earrings in Mirepoix Market. And then because of this notion of the the Book of Ebon and the Mother of Toads, I thought, let's cast Catriona MacColl as the Mother of Toads. So we brought Catriona to Montsegur, and we shot this deranged little short movie. It's only 20 minutes for 20 grand. And the people who put up the money, the money came from a concrete company in West Virginia. Were so happy with the result that they said, okay, why don't you write a feature-length movie which you can shoot on one farm in the forest, and make an H.P. Lovecraft adaptation, because in the course of it we discovered, looking into the rights to the Clark Ashton Smith story, Mother of Toads, that it was public domain. And then we looked a bit further and realized that all of Lovecraft's work was public domain. So it was like, wow, we can adapt any of this. And immediately I wanted to make the Dunwich horror, but the producers were very insistent I should try to adapt Color Out of Space. And they offered me maybe 10 grand to write the script. I needed the money, so I wrote it. By the time I'd finished writing the script, the people from the concrete company were bankrupt and could no longer pay or make the movie. But the script existed, and it went from hand to hand. And a few years later, I got a phone call around 3 a.m. from a very drunk Nicolas Cage in Las Vegas, who wanted to make this movie. Because it was calling me in Montsegur at 3 a.m, I did not believe it was Nicolas Cage, and he only wanted to talk about this hot pink mantis, which was not a part of the script. So at the time I was not really believing this was true. But fortunately, through a series of chance coincidences, Nick got the script, Nick liked the script, eventually agreed to make the movie. Then we had only a very short time to prepare it. There was maybe a month and a half of prep. Boom, suddenly we were shooting. And this was the first big movie I'd made since Dust Devil, and the biggest movie I've ever been allowed to make, because I spent maybe 3.5 million on making this movie, below the line, which was more Dust Devil 1.5, hardware 800 grand. So this was the first big movie. I didn't believe it again until the very end. I mean, the first day on set, I was sure that there was some contractual reason they had to bring me on, but I was sure they were going to fire me after one day and replace me. I thought maybe they would have Panos Cosmatos in the cupboard or something, and they were just waiting for a chance to get rid of me. But by about day 3 or 4, I realized I was actually directing the movie, and that I would be allowed to continue. And I succeeded in shooting the film. We also completed it one day ahead of schedule, which was unique for me. Nick turned out to be great, and he restored my faith in Hollywood, because after Val Kilmer and the Moreau affair, I needed someone like Nick to show me what a real star was like, and he had genuine star quality. When Nick was there, everything worked beautifully, and everyone was super happy. He brought up the morale on the set. We were not all crushed and miserable like on Moreau. It restored my faith in the whole process.
Vous habitez maintenant en France. Avez-vous des projets culturels dans notre beau pays?
Well, but yeah, that's two questions. Yeah, in France and in Hollywood. So in France, I am fighting a war. I am digging in deeper in Montsegur, because right now there is a move by France and by UNESCO to try to cancel Catharism. UNESCO is saying that they will not declare any of the medieval sites in the South World Heritage Sites unless the government is prepared to remove all reference to the so-called C word, Catharism, from the signage from museums and from Wikipedia. So right now there's a big cultural battle to try to save Montsegur and to keep the memory of what actually happened. They want to call it the French Royal Castle, and we disagree, because we know that France only took this castle in 1244, that the king was only 7 years old at the time when he signed off on the execution of these 300 people who were burned. So calling it the French Royal Castle is a bit of an insult. And my cultural role, I think, in Montsegur is to defend the history of the castle and the history of the Cathars. I would like to see the story brought to the attention of a modern audience. So this is a very particular year. We're living in the year of the fire horse, which is a leap year in the Chinese zodiac. It is a time of great chaos in the world, full chaos. wars, rumors of wars, environmental collapse. And chaos is good for me. I thrive in times of chaos. Chaos is a ladder you can climb. So this year we are shooting 3 movies in 1 year. I've already completed the first one, which was Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 3, complete. This movie has more carnage, more slaughter than any other movie I've made. 30 major gore scenes in it. 30, which is averaging 1 every 4 minutes. It's complete. The footage is great. So very, very happy with this movie. And we're starting another one in July, which is a movie called Steel Donkeys. Steel Donkeys. I wrote it in 1989. We're finally shooting it in July. It's going to star Cynthia Rothrock, one of the most dangerous women on earth. And Cynthia is going to fight the demon in the steel mill in Wolverhampton this August. It's going to be the fight of the century. I'm very happy to stage this conflict. And then I hope in the latter part of this year to return to Lovecraft. But I'm keen that finally I'm working wall to wall. And we're shooting strong, violent, insane exploitation material. Very happy with the rushes. So somehow this apocalyptic chaos that we're living in has been good for my career. I don't know why, and I'm very grateful for it. And I'm also grateful to be here at the bloody weekend. So good to see this culture thriving in France, and so good to see the fans happy. I like seeing that they laugh when I show them some of the carnage from Winnie the Pooh, and we're getting smiles. A lot of people are happy, and I want to see more of this. I think it is the only logical way to deal with 2026. The world is insane. We cannot play by their rules. We need to play by our rules and lean into the insanity and into our culture, because it's the only thing that makes sense. Defend your cultural choices. Fuck political correctness. It's all I can say.